Good evening, everybody. Adequate notice of this meeting was provided by sending such notice to the Asbury Park Press, the Middletown Patch, and the Middletown Township Public School District website, and the posting of such notice at the August T. Minor administrative offices and each elementary, middle, and secondary school website in the district. Roll call.
Mrs. Caminiti?
Here.
Mr. Donlin?
Here.
Mr. Gyno?
Here.
Mr. Heffernan?
Here.
Mr. Little?
Here.
Mrs. Tobacco? Here. Mrs. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Capone?
Here.
Mrs. Minuis?
Here. Okay, I'd like to stand for the pledge and a moment of silence for Diane Camilleri, who served as the district for many years as a paraprofessional, passed away on April 3rd. We extend our condolences to the Camilleri family. Eileen Marini has passed away. Mrs. Marini was a Whitston's team member for 13 years. She worked out of High School South, Harmony, and New Monmouth schools. We extend our condolences to the Marini family. Please stand for the pledge and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I need a resolution to go into executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Abstentions? See you there.
Matt, can you hear me?
I can, Eric.
All right, good. My mic was acting up, so I wanted to make sure I was good to go.
Nope, you're good.
Good evening, everybody. Adequate notice of this meeting was provided by sending such notice to the Asbury Park Press, the Middletown Patch, and the Middletown Township Public School District's website, and the posting of such notice at the August T. Minor Administrative Offices and each elementary, middle, and secondary school website in the district. Roll call.
Mrs. Caminetti? Mrs. Caminetti?
Here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Mr. Donlin?
Here.
Mr. Jimo?
Here.
Mr. Heffernan?
Here.
Mr. Little?
Here.
Mrs. Tobacco? Here. Mrs. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Capone?
Here.
Mrs. Menuys?
Here. Okay, we're going to start off tonight with our first presentation about NJIETA grant update.
Hi, thanks everyone for your attention. As you know, we have been participating in the NJIETA inclusion grants for the Harmony Pre-K and for Leonardo K-5. So we have with us tonight Eric Paulson, Principal of Harmony, Pete Smith, Principal of Leonardo, Danielle Schreck, Director of Special Ed, and Angela Mero, Assistant Principal of Harmony and Nutswamp. And they're going to provide a presentation about how we're doing with the grant and what stage of the grant we're in. So I will turn it over to Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Dr. Tiedemann. So I'm going to share my screen, Chris, just so that way you can go right there. That's not what I want. There we go. Present. Here we go. All right. So welcome everybody, Dr. Tiedemann and board members and the general public watching. If you're not aware, Leonardo and Harmony paired up with a couple of groups, some pretty prestigious groups, the New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Education, Montclair State University, and the State Department of Education. To bring inclusion into our district and make it a fruition. So tonight, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of some stuff of our status and a little bit of a history lesson. And this presentation will be posted on the district website because I do have a pretty interesting linked article in this first slide here. The title of that article was Mainstreaming Integration and Inclusion. Is there a difference? So I just took some key points out of that article, which kind of summarizes where we're going with this project and this grant. Back in the early 19th century and 20th centuries, we did a thing in education called integration. And really what that was is our special needs population really were not in our public schools. There were specific facilities for them, and that was the standard practice back then. You would see things like community outings, visiting the malls, grocery stores, things like that. And those were created with good intentions, those programs. But as they evolved, special needs, we started to figure out that they had more than just life skills that they needed. So they really said, well, let's bring them into our schools and we'll practice a thing that started in the 70s and 80s with mainstreaming. And that placed students in our general education classrooms with good intention again, but they were really placed there, and I'm going to use some harsh words, dumped there with very little support either for the student and or the teacher. You might want to call it a type of visit, and that's kind of how the article describes it. But it took care of the physical integration part, but not the social integration, which is probably the most critical component, which brings us to inclusion, which I provided a pretty lengthy, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's one part that this grant is doing for us right now that I'm going to go into a little bit more depth with. And I've made it bold in this description of what inclusion is. And I took it from the article, I copied it. I was allowed to use this information in my presentation tonight. It was from a lady in Texas that does phenomenal work with inclusion. But the key point in that definition is supports are provided in those classrooms for both students and teachers. And that is probably the most critical part to having a successful inclusion program. And that's what our hope is in partnering with Montclair, with the DOE, and with the NJICE. Our hope is to get there. But it is a lengthy process. We're trying to change an institution. And changing institutions takes a lot of time. So although we are really, really excited about how quickly we've moved through some of our initial steps in our grant, which a lot of it was involved, as you can see on this slide, meeting, gathering and organizing data, analyzing data. And right now we're in that phase of designing a goal for each of our focus areas and developing action plans. We've been meeting on a bi-monthly basis since about late August. Actually not bi-monthly, twice a month, I'm sorry. And it's really been a reflective practice that has caused us as educators to take a really good reflective look at what we're doing in Middletown and just in our overall institution of education. And this process, though, is just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. And we are truly excited for it because just from the conversations we've had with these meetings twice a week, which Mr. Smith will go into a little bit more detail with that, we've been able to really and honestly look at ourselves and say, all right, what are we doing good and what do we need to improve upon? And what are areas that we haven't even considered to get to a fully inclusive school environment where all learners are together. And I stress the word all learners together and in the same room. Our commitment to this grant is minimally 5 years. But again, it requires a lot of those things that I list on the slide here. One of the major things, though, is going to be our resource allocation. How do we, and this where it really would involve all of you, how do we support this initiative going forward? And it's such an appropriate time to start this grant work because our second strategic goal in our strategic plan is really a special education inclusion focused goal. So the fact that Leonardo and Harmony are a part of this first cohort, we are the initial cohort in this grant, is exciting. It's going to bring us many resources to this district, which I'm excited for our students and really for our teachers as well. So who's working on this project? I think this is an important slide because it's kind of a resume for the Harmony team. And after I finish, I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith for a little bit. But we have a pretty extensive team working on this and it's very diverse. There is one component missing, which I'll discuss in a moment. But we have a variety of teachers. We have a service provider, child study team members, a reading development teacher, and several administrators. And our resume together, over 130 years combined experience, 9 bachelors, 9 masters, a doctorate. And I think an important component to this team is we all have children of our own, or that we have 16 of our own children. So we can bring that perspective because it's truly important when we're going down the avenue of wanting to have a more inclusive school environment to really put ourselves in the shoes of those parents, the ones that we serve every day. So I'm truly excited for this work. The one part that is missing from our team right now is our parent involvement. And that's only going to add to our resume. But we have not included that component yet because the initial parts of this grant really required us, as I said earlier, to have some hard discussions and honest discussions about what our practices currently are. And not saying that we have bad practices, because in Middletown we have some of the best special education programs in the state, and I could even maybe say in the nation if I wanted to say that. But there are areas that we need to improve upon if we truly want to call ourselves an inclusive educational system. And I think that this grant is going to help guide us in that direction, but it will take time. So I will turn it over to Mr. Smith real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Polson. Good evening, everyone. As I said, I'm Pete Smith, the proud principal of Leonard Grade School. And last spring, our school and myself was extremely excited that we were accepted to this grant. When Dr. Tiedemann presented an opportunity for us to apply for this, I thought about it, and I thought it was a no-brainer. And I think we could always grow, as Mr. Polson has alluded to. We have some of the best programs around, but there's always room for improvement. This is our team resume. It shows a little bit more, a few more years of experience, but it's got a good cross section of our staff. We're thankful that we're able to, Dr. Tiedemann and Mrs. Schreck and Mrs. Wallace serve on both committees, which is an important piece to bring perspective, because although we are going through the same process, the results are different. In year one thus far, as Mr. Polson said, we have met bi-weekly through a self-reflective process. We spent the majority of this time reflecting on our current practices and how it relates to what we'll show on the next slide, 5 quality indicators. Mr. Polson, you want to go to the next slide, please? So these are the different indicators in which we self-reflected and evaluated ourselves on. Each one of them had approximately 31 statements tied to them. This process required the team to engage in a very comprehensive self-evaluation of our current leadership, school climate, instructional practices, family engagement. I tell you, these conversations were long, they were hard, and they were very reflective and very uncomfortable at times. Through this process, we also surveyed the rest of our staff who are not directly involved in the process. And now we're at the point where basically in that infographic that Mr. Polson had showed, we're getting ready to start taking all that data and developing our action plan, which is our next step. And that will include, as Mr. Polson alluded to, one piece that isn't on our resume yet is parent involvement. So on the next slide, we have some of the, these are some sample, and I'm not going to read them for you, of the quality indicator statements that we had to reflect on. It talked about, collaborative planning. It talked about teachers, how they engage in the IEP process, how the parent and the children engage in the IEP process. Those were all types of, under those 5 quality indicators. This is just a very basic on how we rated ourselves. We scored ourselves. And the next slide, Mr. Polson. May 4th, we're going to have a more in-depth, and I believe NJCIE and some other folks are going to be presenting with us that night alongside of us. It is on May 4th. So for those Star Wars fans, may the 4th be with you, and may you be with us that night. And we will have more information upcoming on that. And as I said, I can't be more proud and happy to be involved in this work, because it's always, special education and inclusion has always been something that I have a passion for. Thank you.
So I don't know if any of the board members have any questions. We wanted to keep it basic because we're truly excited for the May 4th. Let me just stop sharing for a second. The May 4th presentation night, which will be approximately about a 45-minute presentation, followed by a Q&A. And we will be doing Q&A there, but if any board members have any questions about what we've been doing so far, we'd be more than willing to answer them right now. Ms. Schreck, Ms. Merrow, myself, Dr. Tiedemann, we're all here. And we collaboratively been working on this pretty extensively. And it's been a a great endeavor so far.
No, it sounds really good. I'm really excited that the parents are going to get to be a part of it too.
I'd just like to say something a minute. Mr. Paulson and Mr. Smith and the rest of your team, thank you so much. This sounds really exciting.
Yeah, I just, want to reiterate, thanks, because, the student services obviously has been meeting with Dr. Tiedemann, and our committee has been getting the benefit of hearing some updates every month about the great work that everybody has been doing on this. And I can also say, as a parent, I am very excited that our district is finally moving in this direction. I think, the community really showed a lot of interest and support. I think it was, it was obviously over a year ago when NJCIE came and actually presented on inclusion and really opened up, I think, a lot of eyes, honestly, as to what this really could look like and the benefit to all students throughout the district, and really just spark that enthusiasm, at least on the community side. And so to see a lot of work that has already gone into this, I know I am greatly appreciative of it, and so many parents in the district are as well. So thank you.
I will just give one quick point. Please, if you have a moment when we post the slideshow, it's a 2-page article that's linked on that third slide. It is a powerful, powerful article. I actually, as part of this grant, I'm part of another co-op group of administrators, and so is Mr. Smith. And that's how I came to get this article. I would have probably never found it before, but just that alone, that one article kind of changed my whole viewpoint. And that's really what has to happen here, a whole mindset shift, a cultural shift. And we know to do that in any town is tough. And in Middletown, it's going to be tough as well. So we're excited. We thank you all for supporting us in this. And we are truly grateful. So thank you.
What's your timeline for, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but what's your timeline for actually starting implementing in the classroom with students?
So that'll be determined basically by our action plans. That's the hard part here, is that I understand a lot of people are going to want a timeline of, all right, when are we going to start seeing this? It really is going to come down to shifting mindsets and the culture first. But that really would be determined at an IEP meeting, when we can start doing this and when we feel we're ready to, when we have the right supports and resources in place for whatever specific student it may be. So I would love to have that crystal ball to timestamp it, but I think it's going to be, as I said from the beginning, it's a 5+ year project that I think I would love to see it next year. I don't envision seeing that much until we work on some of our initial weaknesses that we identified in our reflective of those quality indicators, because there's some baseline things that need to change from a whole standpoint of our system and how it works.
Also, to the point of our staff needs, part of the action plan is going to be professional development. Is going to be a big piece of that, to not only support our students, but also support our staff. So just that's another little add-on there that I agree with what Mr. Paulson is saying. It's because our staff, we have to be well prepared for it to be successful. We don't want to have people feel ill prepared to start something such as important as this work. So
yeah.
That'll
you
be
don't want to have a false start. And I think the key component here is having Montclair teamed up onto this team with us, because a lot of that training and stuff, if we can get that down into the collegiate level, we could have candidates coming right out of college prepared with a lot of the skills. And it's not that our teachers currently don't have skills, but it's really knowing who has what skills and how we tap into those and share each other's expertise, which we have a good base and core structure in our district to identify that. But I think when we really laser focus it on the actual inclusion process, I can tell you just from our reflection at Harmony, we have to do a better job of that. And that's what our hope is for this grant.
And a big shout out to Eric Paulson and Pete Smith, who were so willing to apply for the grant and take this on in June of 2020, when they had a few other things going on at the same time, knowing what a big project it is. And the amount of time just devoted to it by the staff has been really excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, now we're going to
Thank
move
you.
on.
Have a nice night.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
Thank you very much. Chris, could you put the other presentation up?
We're going to move on to the budget plan for the federal grant funds related to the coronavirus school recovery.
So we put together next week on our agenda, we're going to have a resolution or an item for the board to approve the submission of our application for the ESSER 2 funds, which is due May 14th. So the purpose of this presentation is to recap, what we have done and what we have planned so far for the two main buckets of money that we're receiving to address various pandemic-related issues, specifically the CARES Act money and these ESSER 2 funds that we're going to be submitting a plan for. So Chris, if you go to the first page. So to start off, to refresh everyone's memory, this application was put in last year for our CARES Act funds, and those funds run from March 2020 through September of 2022. And so far, our plan, the part that's been executed is we have Imagine Learning and SOAR that have been taking place since last year. And for the future use of these funds, we have planned high school 2021 summer school for core class credit recovery, English, PE, health, math, etc. SOAR programs in 21 and 22. Summer SEL, social emotional learning and responsive classroom groups. And we are exploring the possibility of adopting additional interactive and intuitive resource software program for K-8 students to use at home to target personalized learning needs in ELA and mathematics. I don't know, Mrs. Pekas, if you want to add some comments.
Yes, thank you. So we have been collaborating with the building administration and curriculum directors and special education directors and administrators to really identify where the greatest need lies amongst our learners as we move forward through the recovery from the pandemic and what has transpired to the way we've been instructing students the last 12 plus months. And most specifically, we have been looking at the high school and where our students lie in terms of their grades, because we all know at the high school level, grades mean accumulation of credit, and credits are required for graduation. So we are starting to drill down and identify where we may have pockets of students who will not successfully accumulate the required number of credits for graduation and or credits in core classes that are required for graduation. And that includes 4 years of English and 4 years of health and physical education, among other things. So we are looking at, for the first time in a while, introducing the idea of a summer school for high school students so that they can participate and start to recoup some of those credits so that they stay on track for high school graduation. So that's something that we're starting to explore. I know Mr. Ranella, Mr. Kirkpatrick and I are started that conversation, and we'll be following up with the principals and the directors and the APs of guidance for further planning. And we'll keep you all informed as we go along. You'll see that our sewer offerings are expanded again. We're anticipating them to include even more targeted programs this summer. That will include a Jumpstart Kindergarten program for incoming kindergartners, because we know that there's many preschoolers who have not been actively attending or participating in in-person preschool programs. So we want to make sure that our incoming kindergartners are ready for success and are able to be available to learn when they start kindergarten in the fall. And very strategic target groups and camps such as phonemic awareness for our kindergartners and first graders, reading and writing strategy camps, and Jumpstart programs for high school math, including geometry and algebra 1. Go ahead, Chris.
So that recaps what the plan is for the CARES Act money. Just to refresh everyone's memory, I don't have the exact number written down, but it is a little over $400,000 total that the district has available through September 2022. So the next few slides specifically deal with the new application that we'll be putting in for the ESSER 2 funds. And our allocation, first of all, that grant period ends September 30th, 2023. So it extends out a year longer than the CARES Act funds that we have. And the allocation is made in 3 categories. We have our general ESSER 2 funds, which you can see our allocation is $1,798,350. And then there are 2 specific allocations for targeted initiatives, learning acceleration of $115,409 and mental health of $50,377. So the next few bullets give a overview of what these funds can be used for per the guidelines. The ESSER 2 funds can be used to address learning loss, preparing schools for reopening, testing, repairing upgraded projects for air quality in school buildings, and similar to those are also allowable uses under the CARES Act. The Learning Acceleration Funds may be used to support enrichment programs and summer learning academies, extend instructional time to effectively scaffold student learning and professional development opportunities. The mental health funds are targeted to be used to support schools in building or enhancing a continuum of school-based mental health services for students in coordination with existing county and local services and supports for educators. So based upon those parameters, if we go to the next slide, we'll talk more specifically about what we have in mind for the application for the ESSER 2 funds and the other targeted funds. So the ESSER 2 budget plan, which would run from 21 to 23, we are looking at some additional certificated teaching staff members, which Mrs. Pekas, if you want to elaborate on how those would be implemented.
Sure. So right now, after reviewing our current enrollment projections for the 21-22 school year, and after meeting with each of the 17 principals, we have identified the need for 5 additional elementary classroom or special education teachers for next school year and the school year 22-23. And that's targeted to provide the opportunity to reduce class sizes so that teachers and co-teachers and class support teachers can provide small group instruction specific to the needs of each learner. And also 5 middle school or high school classroom or special education teachers for next school year to address the needs of students in special education programs at both the middle school and high school, as well as students who have yet to demonstrate that they've met the requirements for graduation next year. And that would be in the form of a push-in support program in 12th grade English and math courses.
And then in addition to that, remaining funds that we have left from this portion of the funds, we would be looked to be targeting, we have many continuing HVAC improvements and repairs. We also have utilized funds from our reserves to fund some of those in next year's budget. So if there's any way we could give some relief to our reserve accounts too, we would do that as well with these funds. But we will wait and see what is needed for the instructional certificated staff member allocation first, and then we can plan accordingly over the next 2 years for the remainder of those funds to apply to necessary HVAC projects. So So the Learning Acceleration Budget Plan for 21 through 23, Mrs. Pekas, I think you can.
So as Amy just shared, the Learning Acceleration Funds are very targeted. They have a very specific purpose. And if you participated in our board meeting, I believe it was in February or early March, we did a assessment presentation to bring the district and the board up to date on where our students lie after we did our second round of Linkit assessments midwinter. And we addressed the fact that what we saw in our data was that there are some identified gaps or specific, say, standards or skills or even certain grade levels where we saw that students were underperforming where we would expect them to be at this time of year. And we really felt that that was due to the lack of opportunities or the limited opportunities or the loss of opportunities that have occurred given the constraints we've had in implementing instruction, whether that be, because of the virtual instruction, sometimes limits what teachers can do, as well as the shortened days. And those were things that we had to deal with, and it forced teachers to make choices, all of us to make choices. And so what this Learning Acceleration Grant is targeted to do for all districts, because we weren't alone in that, all districts were faced with those circumstances, is to build back in those lost opportunities that students really need. So we're looking to focus either summer programs or before or after school enrichment programs to target those areas that we have listed there. I do want to highlight for this grant that 75% of the funds have to be dedicated to STEM enrichment or activities, and 25% are meant to address English or visual and performing arts areas or standards. So you do see there that we have included a variety of enrichment programs that we're looking to implement, including visual and performing art groups that can meet to build back in opportunity for that lost time, whether that be instrumental lessons, chorus or vocal lessons. Perhaps our drama students, we know that they've had some lost opportunity for performances. So we are targeting more than just traditional core classes and opportunities there. We also are planning to increase and expand upon our Jumpstart AP or Advanced Placement Program by building in additional summer sessions, as well as we also left off there the spring sessions as they prepare for their AP exams. We also want to build in opportunity for students who are reluctant at this time to take on the challenge of AP courses next year, because maybe they feel that they aren't quite ready for that, given what they've experienced over the last couple months. So we would like to provide those students with some Jumpstart programs to build up their confidence to take those rigorous courses. And the last thing, I don't know, somehow I think I deleted it by accident. I'm sorry, Amy, I'll fix it before you post this. We also are looking at, my bullet got left off, possible staff development to enhance the capacity to analyze data and inform instruction. That is a targeted area in the grant application that they want us to address as well.
So the last piece is the mental health budget plan for 21-23. We talked about including YMCA counseling sessions, need-based. Those would be things that aren't included in our current contract, but would be funded separately. Staff professional development for trauma-informed care, crisis and threat assessment, responsive classroom training, some parent programs, and some universal screening tools. So again, that would be for the $50,000 piece for the mental health.
So that's our plan right now. It is a projection, it's a plan. We may need to go back and adjust it as new needs are identified over the next couple of weeks or months. Obviously, it's a long-term plan. Some of these grants expand over the length of all the way to 2023. So we will constantly reevaluate the students' needs, the staff needs, the district needs, and address them accordingly.
So again, we will have an item for approval of the submission of this application on our next week's board meeting, and that application has to be submitted with the resolution by May 14th.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go right into our superintendent's update.
All right, good evening, everyone.
I'd just like to take a minute first to celebrate the contributions of our paraprofessional staff. April 1st was National Paraprofessional Appreciation Day, which is a day dedicated to recognizing the role of paraprofessionals in the classroom. Paraprofessionals provide assistance to teachers and other school personnel in the delivery of quality education and sports services for students. Our paraprofessionals work tirelessly each day to support students and teachers, and they're an integral part of our educational process and play a very important role in the success of our students. Our district was closed for spring break on April 1st, but I'd be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to express our gratitude to honor our wonderful paraprofessional staff for their service. Also, today is Administrative Assistants Appreciation Day, which is our secretaries, and we call them secretaries, but they really are administrative assistants. We're so appreciative of the support that our administrative assistants provide to our administrators, to our staff, to our parents, and most importantly, to our students. They assist with the operations of the building and the district on the district level. They support our teachers, they welcome our students, and they're the voice of each school and a reference for our parents. Our districts and schools would be at a great loss without our secretaries, and thank you for all you do. I'd also like to say a couple words about where we are with lunches and a full day schedule. Right, we're continuing to prepare for a full instructional day in mid-May. Our principals are working right now to finalize their plans for lunch, which is part of the full day. And they're going to be looking at opportunities for students to eat outdoors, and they'll provide their school community with their plans shortly. Each school has a different plan due to facilities and space, enrollments, schedules, etc. So after you receive your plan, if you have any questions, please reach out to your school's principal. They will be able to answer the specific questions about the procedures for lunch. Since September, we have been moving through our restart and recovery plan. We've been increasing the in-person instruction time for students at each step. First, we increased the number of students in our classroom. And at each step, there was trepidation with increasing in-person class size. But we reviewed the health data along with our public and medical health professionals and put all NJDOH guidelines in place to safeguard student and staff health and safety. And ultimately, the moves that we made were successful. I just want to review our progress moving through our reopening plan since September. We were among the first in the county and state to return to in-person instruction this year. This move caused staff and parents unease. We made sure safety protocols were in place and we were able to open successfully. Then in October, we increased the number of students in each class by giving students with IEPs and other at-risk students the opportunity to attend school in person 5 days a week. Again, this caused our community concern, but we ensured that safety protocols were in place and we were able to increase the number of students in person successfully. We then welcomed our students who had been learning remotely in December. Again, there was concern that we were adding more students in person, but we were able to accomplish this phase successfully. In February, we extended the school day for our students in special class programs, including eating lunch in school. Understandably, there was concern by community members, but we were able to implement that schedule successfully. Most recently, we provided the opportunity for students to participate in person 5 days a week. And again, there was concern. However, we were able to accomplish this phase successfully. At each step we took throughout the year, there were instances in which we had to pivot classes, grades, whole schools to virtual instruction temporarily. This is a step used by all schools to safeguard student and staff health when there is a possibility of spread in the school. We will continue to employ this procedure as needed. However, we do not anticipate that moving to a full day schedule with lunch will increase the need to pivot to remote learning due to the safety protocols we are putting in place. As we move towards implementation of lunch, we are following the New Jersey Department of Health guidelines and monitoring our health data to ensure we will be successful with this next step, just as we've done throughout the year. All New Jersey Department of Health safety protocols will be in place, and the health data will continue to be monitored daily. As I stated earlier, our principals are working on plans for lunch, including opportunities for students to eat outdoors, and they will provide that information as soon as their plans are finalized. Although each school's plan is different, there will be common safety protocols, such as when masks are removed, students will be at least 6 feet apart. This is in alignment with the guidelines to prevent the spread of the virus, and it reduces the need for quarantining students since they are 6 feet apart. There have been students eating snack in our school all year following these guidelines successfully. These also included in eating lunch in our school are our aftercare students who eat lunch daily, and our elementary school students who eat snack daily. In February, our students in the special class programs have been eating lunch in school and participating in the full day schedule. Since this summer, we've had the goal of moving through our reopening plan in a safe manner. This is still our goal, with health and safety as our priority. We believe we can move to a full schedule safely. However, we continue to monitor health data and consult with our public and medical health professionals as we approach the anticipated May 10th start date.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty, committee reports, legislative.
Yesterday, the members attended, myself, Mr. Capone, Mrs. Caminiti, Mr. Little, and Ms. Tobacco. Our guest was Senator Declan O'Scanlan, NJ 13th District Legislative. Talking about S2 funding, there was a resolution for a pause on the implementation of S2 and a review and update of the funding formula to reflect the 21st century learning. Committee discussed the resolution with Senator O'Scanlan, who supported the idea and suggested that the wording include a reference to the legislative effort already underway. Senator O'Scanlan informed the committee that it's becoming increasingly likely that the state budget will include more stabilization aid to districts to mitigate 2021-2022 S2 reductions. The objective would be to delay implementation a longer phase-in period for the remaining S2 reductions.
Right, so we're going to include, this is a reference to a resolution that the board is going to consider next week in support of these efforts.
Correct. We then moved on to chapter 44. I'm just going to add there really wasn't much of an update there, but the Board of Ed passed a resolution last month to urge legislators to provide short-term and long-term relief and unintended consequences of the implementation of the NJ Educators Health Plan. Implementation of the NJ EHP has increased Middletown's health insurance costs by $902,000 for 2020-2021. We also spoke about the 83904. Senator O'Scanlan asked the committee to please keep him updated on the issue from this district's perspective, particularly in the area of any negotiations with any service providers. And that was it.
All righty, thank you. Any questions? All right, technology. Mike?
Joan, I'm going to ask Mr. Suyak to give an update.
Sure.
Good evening. Last week, we met as Technology Committee, and we had a few items on the agenda that we discussed. The first being the summer 2021 technology internship. This internship program is going to be offered again this year, as we have done for the past 5 years. It's available to high school students. It's a five-day per week, July and August, 4 hours per day internship. Just like most years, the students will be focused on Chromebook repair and configuring, desktop building and imaging, and maintaining other district hardware and software. Applications are currently being accepted online, and interviews are starting to be scheduled for the first week of May. We also discussed the Zoom board meeting upgrades that we were recently put into place as we continue hybrid meetings, which is the whole room camera, enhanced surround sound speakers, and audio balancing microphones. We discussed the possibility of investigating if we can do the follow the speaker movement with the camera, which we are still working on. So the camera in the BOE meeting room would actually be able to zoom in on individual speakers. We discussed Chromebook collection for the summer as well. Just like every year, obviously, we'll be collecting high school senior Chromebooks prior to the end of the year. We'll schedule that with each high school administration and coordinate with them. As we did in the last 2 summers, we will not be collecting high school underclassmen, nor will we be collecting middle school student Chromebooks. We tried this process out for 2 years now, and it seemed to work out well. It was positive for both the students and staff. Students were able to still use those devices over the summer, and they returned back to school in September with minimal damage. The collection of the elementary student Chromebooks is still yet to be determined. We were trying to wait until as the year progresses to see what our expectation is going to be for September, and the pros and cons of collecting them, but I'll report back when that decision has been made. We discussed our technology purchases. On this month's voting agenda are Chromebooks, desktops, interactive flat panels for purchase this year. We discussed the lead times for technology is still pretty large, and the purchasing of these items at this particular time will get us ahead in the queue of other districts that won't be able to place those orders closer to the summer. And this will allow us plenty of lead time for us to get those devices prepared and installed before September. Finally, we discussed power outages in the district that were causing some server issues, and how we are utilizing E-rate funding, Category 2 E-rate funding this year to replace and add 11 additional UPS battery supplies for our elementary schools. In our elementary schools, it's cost prohibitive to have them connected to generators. So these UPSs that will be E-rateable will be able to protect our equipment, such as our wireless and wired equipment, as well as the security cameras and door access panels. Our next meeting is going to be either June or July. We haven't finalized a date yet, but we will schedule something as we get closer to the end of the year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Anybody? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Student Services, Deb?
Yes, thank you. So we had our Student Services Committee meeting on April 15th. We opened up the meeting with another update on the inclusion grant, which we just got the great update tonight for everybody. And that, again, was very exciting to hear. The other piece of good news that we learned at the committee meeting is that Bayview Elementary School has now applied for a 3 to 5 year systemic change grant with NJIETA. And all the schools will be, or if they get awarded, we'll find out hopefully by the end of June or early July. So we're very excited that Bayview may be joining that team as well. And we did ask if we can have a representative from NJCIE come to our Student Services Committee meeting in June as a guest speaker. So Dr. Tiedemann is helping with that, so we can continue to talk about inclusion, really what that means. And we also thought it was a good idea following the special presentation, again, that was announced tonight. That's going to be happening on the evening of May 4th. So that will be obviously in collaboration with MTF ODL and NJCIE. So we thought it would be good, if there are questions or particular concerns or ideas that are raised in that meeting, to have an opportunity to follow up with NJCIE very close in time to that. We also continue to talk about the Effective School Solution Program, ESS, that is now going to be starting at the middle school level. As we reported last month, this program is expected to start on May 3rd as a temporary Tier 2 program. And then we will be launching into a Tier 3 wraparound program, I think approximately in July. And referrals at this point for the program are currently underway. And the actual program itself is going to be housed at Thorne Middle School. We also continue to discuss the disproportionality citation that was received from the DOE and sort of where that work currently is going. If you all remember, we actually hired Dr. Ferguson with Temple University to come and be our consultant now with Dr. Meg Young. And Dr. Fergus has now been able to meet with administrators. I believe that meeting happened on March 21st or 24th, I'm sorry, to explain how the district's work on equity inclusion is going to proceed going forward. Dr. Meg Young is working very closely with Dr. Fergus, and really just at this point, I think starting to meet and reviewing what were described to us as root causes, and then also trying to develop equity teams for each school. The district, at this point is going to be continuing to review data. I think Dr. Young had already started doing that before Dr. Fergus, had joined the team, but now with Dr. Fergus's input, really looking, I think, more closely at that data and the practices for each respective building. We are also asking that an update on the disproportionality work be planned for the June BOE workshop meeting. I don't know if I don't think I'm missing anything on that one, Dr. Tiedemann, am I?
No, that just about covers it.
Okay, and then we just then, basically concluded the meeting with talking about the fact that April is Autism Awareness Month. We were given, some updates as what the different schools have been doing basically to celebrate Autism Awareness Month. And we also got to see a very cool interactive PowerPoint that New Monmouth School put together for the students, and things that they could, click on, hear, read alouds, and other things and stuff to basically celebrate it. And it was very good.
Deb, are those equity teams that are going into each school, is that equity within the special needs population, or is that equity in the general population?
I think it's looking at all areas, correct, Dr. Tiedemann?
Yes, all areas.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, guys. Facilities and finance.
Yes. Just I want to go back to legislative real quick. I'm sorry,
Sure.
Mrs. Walker and Mrs. Doherty was in attendance there. I didn't say a name. I apologize. Facilities and finance was on April 7th. Mr. Capone, Ms. Minuis, Ms. Caminiti, and Ms. Tobacco were in attendance. Mrs. Doherty, Mrs. Walker, Mr. Cahill, Mr. O'Malley, Mr. Ferrara, and Mr. Prokowski was also present. The update on the HVAC long-range facilities plan, Spiesel Architects, along with Schiller and Hirsch engineers, spoke to the committee regarding the district's HVAC equipment status and priorities for replacement. The long-range facilities plan has been reorganized into 5 priority categories, with the emphasis being put on HVAC systems and exterior envelope improvements. Priority 1 and 2 alone carry a cost of approximately $70 million. The committee will continue to discuss with the objective of mapping out a long-term plan to address these items, as well as other possible capital projects to be determined. 21-22 capital projects, the fire alarm systems. Mr. Cahill, Mr. Prokowski, and Mr. Ferrara discussed the proposed fire alarm system projects in 21-22 budget. Mr. Cahill was asked to provide documentation to Mr. Capone related to any violations, tests, and other reports on the fire alarm system for the last year as requested, and noted there were 0 fire alarm violations for Thorne Middle School and others on the list. The projects planned for this summer are a system replacement at Thompson and a replacement of the head panels at 5 elementary schools. Mr. Cahill also explained that during the process of doing the system replacement at Thorne, which started over spring break, it was discovered the wiring was not in place for a number of the heat sensors. There is now a change order at Thorne project to include the wiring of these heat sensors. Members of the committee asked why the projects were planned for this summer were being done if the systems are operational at this point and safe. The facility supervisor explained the systems are old, parts are becoming unavailable, and the district is being proactive in replacing the head panels before they completely shut down. The panels are being installed will be able to accommodate future upgrades to the system as well. When the committee asked if these fire alarms are safe and would you allow your children in these schools, the answer was there is no reason for me to say no. Local Recreation Improvement Grant application is due May 24th, 2021. Mrs. Doherty appraised the committee about the grant opportunity. Funding is limited, $2.5 million for the entire state, but the district will look to identify a project for this to submit. Moving on to finance, the update on insurance options 21-22. Mr. O'Malley from Gallagher Benefits Ed O'Malley reviewed the results of the marketing efforts to date with the committee. Horizon is holding a proposed 7% increase in premiums for next year. Aetna has proposed taking over the district's health plan at 5% increase in premiums over the current year. Mr. O'Malley did not have back firm proposals on self-insured models, as the carriers were awaiting another month of claims in order to put together proposals. The committee discussed the potential disruption in providers that could occur in a transition to Aetna. Mr. O'Malley stated that Aetna asserts that more of the providers in Middletown Board of Ed employees' use would be in-network providers for Aetna than Horizon. Mr. O'Malley will work on getting more specific information, analyzing potential disruptions. Contracts. YMCA, Mrs. Doherty met with YMCA to discuss the financial terms of the 2020-2021 contract. The YMCA had requested the district to waive the revenue sharing for this year. Mrs. Doherty informed the YMCA that the district was willing to work with the YMCA on financial requirements from this year's contract, with the understanding that the foregone revenue from this year would be recaptured in subsequent years forward. The YMCA responded that they would be discussing the current contract and renewal for 21-22 with their finance committee. On transportation, Assembly 3904 requirements, Ms. Doherty informed the committee that certain transportation contracts are objecting to the per diem deductions that have been made by the contractual payments this year. These deductions are the result of COVID-related school closures. 83904 specifies the district are required to negotiate with service providers when schools are closed more than 3 days. The committee also discussed the benefits that the contracts are likely realizing, such as PPP loan forgiveness and other stimulus monies. Volleyball in Middletown, an amendment to the VIM contract for 2021 will be on the agenda for the board to approve this month. The amendment reflects a reduction in the financial obligation for VIM for this year due to the group's inability to fundraise as planned during the pandemic. It is estimated the district will absorb approximately $8,600 in costs for the 2021 year. The 21-22 contract has not been yet discussed. Health insurance broker RFP timeline. Ms. Doherty issued an RFP for health insurance brokerage services that were due back April 9th. The board has held a special meeting on April 19th to interview the firms. NJSIG refund. Ms. Doherty informed the committee that the district received an insurance refund from last year of $56,000 as a result of the pandemic. And a facility use update. A Dodge commercial was being produced, filming for Dodge had requested use of the parking lot at High School North, which I think occurred about a week ago. On Friday and Saturday, April 9th and 10th, High School North will be back up site in case approval for using the New York Waterway site is not given by the County of Monmouth. And the next meeting is scheduled for May 4th at 6 p.m.
Actually, an update to that they were not granted the use of New York Waterway site. They did use High School North. Everything went fine. Actually drove by to see the cars.
Hopefully we're on a commercial.
So we'll be in a commercial, yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, you won't see High School North in the commercial, but you'll know that it was filmed there. So.
Yes.
All right, curriculum. Policy, I'm sorry, policy's next.
Policy did not meet this month, but I understand that Mr. Kirkpatrick might have an update.
Sure, I'd be happy to share. Good evening, everyone. There were a few minor revisions to mandatory policy 2415.05, which is student surveys, analysis, and/or evaluations. And what this does is it addresses the protection. It addresses how the protection of pupil rights amendments requires written consent from parents before students are required to participate in surveys, analysis, or evaluations that concerns protected information. In the last copy of the policy, there was only 8 protected information items listed. They added a 9th. Social Security was added, so now there's 9 on the list of protected information. They also updated the definition of minor. So if you read the policy, it lists 18-year-old students or emancipated minors. The new policy lists unemancipated minors as well. So it says 18-year-old students, emancipated minors, or unemancipated minors. It also removed the No Child Left Behind citation That's in the end of the policy guide. Since No Child Left Behind ended in 2015, it was replaced by Every Student Succeeds Act. So just those 3 minor changes.
Thank you. So that policy will be on for first reading at next week's meeting. And then in addition to that, we have several second readings that were first readings last month that we discussed last month.
Do we want to discuss the?
Bruce, want to just give us.
Yeah,
give us an
do you want
update
to
on-
give an update on the board meeting policy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll be brief. It's a policy that is required that Strauss Esme sent over that my office also took a look at and added some revisions. It's a result of the promulgation of remote meeting regulations by the Department of Community Affairs related to a public health emergency and remote meetings by public bodies, just the requirements for conducting remote meetings.
Do we want a further discussion on that? Any comments?
Talk about what we're doing, or
Yeah, I think this would be the time to discuss what people are
let's get
planning
everybody's
to do.
opinion on what we think we should do, and
Yep.
Is this up for a vote next week or?
Well, this.
The
The
issue of whether to return to in-public meetings is not up for a vote. That's just an issue that arises out of implementing this policy if and when the board wants to go back to having the public permitted to attend meetings.
Right, but the policies that are second readings next week, when you vote on those revisions would be approved. Clarify that.
So I think what we're seeing is in the policy, it says, and you said it could be read more than one way, but if the board is meeting in public, the public has a right to attend the meetings. Is that correct?
There are sections of the policy that reference that, yeah.
there's certain guidelines and maintaining the.
You still have to maintain proper social distancing. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So I guess our discussion is, when are we ready to let the public come back in? And I'll give my personal opinion is that if everybody's going back to school on May 10th, I think that we should start conducting our board meetings where the public is invited to come in with safe social distancing.
The kids are going back into school, I think we should be leading by example as well.
Does anybody have any objections to that?
I just thought we would talk about this in a policy meeting, so I don't know that I was prepared.
When would we start this?
That's
When would we start
that's
it?
what we'd have to figure out.
I mean, not next week.
Not next
So the
week.
earliest possible to consider it would be your May meetings.
In May? Okay. No,
That
I'm
would be the
for-
earliest
I
you'd be
know.
able to do it. I'm not necessarily saying you have to do it in May, but it's impossible to do by next week.
Yeah, no, it would be impossible. Because we'd have to
Well,
set.
the children will be back in May. We should be back. We should open it up to the public.
Open back.
So Jackie, do you want
Say
to
again?
have a discussion now, or are you gonna have a policy meeting?
No,
soon?
I would think this should have been a policy discussion. I wasn't really prepared for this tonight.
Okay,
Amy, I don't know. What do you think? I mean.
it's up to you.
Well, I don't, we're not talking about changing the policy.
No.
You know, as Bruce said, or Mr. Padula said, we're talking about what the impact of implementing this, this policy would mean. And that's, discussion was if there are sections of this policy that refer to, the public having the ability to attend the meeting when there's board members and, present.
Okay, so logistically then I guess the question is, we're gonna have this discussion now. Logistically, the question would be, how do we facilitate that with half the board remote, half the board in person with the actual, and maybe Mr. Rotolo can answer this. How do we address that with the audio visual and with having members of the public come in and members of the public be on Zoom? And how do you then queue up questions and make sure that everything is equitable?
Sure, I'd have to consult with Amy, I'd have to consult with Dave Suiak. We have to figure out what location, what room we would want to have it in. We would outfit that room appropriately, following guidelines, but also because where those guidelines are going to be in place, there's most likely have to be a measure where Zoom is most likely still going to have to be a part of our meeting. We have to have those lines of communications open for members of the public that are unable to be in the room.
Yeah, nobody's looking to cut anybody out. We would still do the public on Zoom and the board members that can't attend, but we would give the public that would choose to come in public the opportunity to do that.
Is it possible to do a survey to see if people within the district want to come in person? Because if nobody's gonna come, it was a struggle last time we tried. Not that I'm opposed to it.
You hear people who do want to actually come in person, so we have to,
If we do, then, I understand that. It's just.
You're not cutting anything out from anybody, you're just offering another option.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way of putting it. You're just adding your
Just-
current structure, but you're
Right.
adding the option for the public to attend.
Right.
Yeah.
And then would we set a limit, or are we just gonna hope that the right amount show up and don't go over the social distancing limits, or?
No, we'd have to make sure we follow the social distancing.
How many do you think are gonna show up? I think right now we have 76 folks, I think, on Zoom. I can't remember a time when we had 76 come to a meeting, so I would say that if they want to come, I'm not opposed to that. I think worrying about space is probably least of our issues. What do we usually have, like a dozen people who show up in person?
Unless there's a topic.
Right, unless there's a topic, then we usually use like the auditorium or something anyway, right?
I just remember it being a struggle with, being on the computers and then,
Yeah, when we
talking to
tried
each
it that
other.
one
It's
time, it
just-
was really difficult, so I guess we just need to.
More like this.
Yeah,
Well-
we got more
We have to
equipment
set
now.
up more, we have
Oh,
more
yeah.
time, more equipment, more.
I mean,
Well, the only thing we wouldn't have would be, right now, I mean, we, I guess in the auditorium, we'd have a screen, and in the media center, we do have a
Screen.
we have a screen, not the smart board, but, we'd have to basically, I mean, to answer the question, the logistics would have to be worked on. And, we optimize what we can do with the equipment that we have.
And I guess we'd have to have procedures just to make sure. I mean, the one thing I've always said is that I would not want to have have a big meeting inside of a school building affect quarantine if, God forbid, there's an outbreak or anything else happens the next day, and then our kids have to be quarantined. So we'd have to have procedures as well, even if you're sitting people apart. And we all know people gather afterwards, people, linger, people walk in different ways. So I just think this all has to be, the logistics have to be really worked out, because I don't want to have to, everyone's already complaining and upset about the quarantines and missing school days. And so I just want to make sure that that's all, worked out, so that we're not putting the kids at risk, because I think right now parents are still not allowed in the buildings, correct?
No, they are, I mean.
Well, we were limiting visitors, yeah.
Well, I guess
They're
I was thinking
allowed, but-
athletics,
Yeah,
you know.
there's not like we're supposed to,
Right, but
parents
like
can't go in, but.
meetings, like I know
Superintendent
meetings, we're still not allowed to be in person in our IEP meetings, so I feel like that's also a consideration. Are we gonna start letting?
That's because staff are there, like, because you're in the room with staff, but here it's
During the
gonna be.
school day.
It's during the school day with staff present in the room.
And the students are
And
present
the
in the building.
students, yeah. So,
And then the custodians would come and clean
absolutely.
everything they would have to say.
I think it's a good step forward if we.
I mean, we can we'll set up the protocols,
Yeah, so.
I mean, we may.
Well, I think the one thing that's being said is that, not to, Mr. Sewiak in the technology committee update was talking about trying to get better microphone use and, getting zooming in on people who are speaking in the room. I'm hoping that we can keep the quality of the Zoom, because I'm just going to say, like, there's a lot more participation when people can kind of pipe in when they want to, especially when public comments at the end of the meeting, right? Folks, might want to skip certain parts because they have something to do with, whatever, have dinner or whatever they're doing. So I think that we need to make sure that, I get the protocols, I get all that, but I think we need to make sure that the Zoom, that the way we're doing it right now with social media, that we can still get that done effectively. Because I think Barry just mentioned about, the auditorium. I think we all had laptops and we were like interfering with each other. You could hear the feedback across the stage last time we did that.
Yeah, we're not looking to cut anything back. We're looking to advance for those.
No, I know what
who
you're saying, but
Just adding another feature is what we'll be doing.
No, I got you, but for the little room that you're in now, that took a little while to get that working, right? So the North Auditorium historically has been difficult at times, even for when we were using just the what we're using the YouTube.
Well, it would probably acoustically, the media center would be better.
You know that
it just has
capacity,
less
what the
capacity.
capacity would be?
We would have to see, like, if we set something up similar to this, maybe a little bit more compact in the middle of the media center, then how many more, we'd have to analyze how many more people we could
That
get
would
in
work
there.
similar to this in a little bit of a, similar fashion with a little bit more space.
Yeah, we can maybe bring this a little tighter, but see how many more people we could fit. Maybe we could start with that. That might be a better sound quality and the logistics would be better. Instead of I agree, the auditorium is difficult.
Yeah, it was frustrating.
All right, so we're gonna look into it and see what the logistics are and how it would work out.
Yeah, I mean, if we feel the capacity in the media center would be okay, for, at least for now, maybe that would be where to start.
All right, good discussion to start. Any other questions or concerns? All righty, on to curriculum.
I could do that. Look, I'm trying to remember what day we met. What did we meet, a week ago? Mr. Siegel, Ms. Von Glahn, Ms. Pekas, they presented to the committee talking about new curriculum in terms of social studies and health curriculum. In particular, social studies was U.S. History 2, World History, and there's also economics and entrepreneurial literacy elective. A lot of the talk about social studies was a lot returning to sort of civic type concepts to talk about, instead of memorization for students, talking more about current events and how to become active in their communities. We also talked about various pieces of health curriculum, which are a bunch, not only for the elementary schools, but middle school 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. We'll be voting on this curriculum because there's various purchases in terms of textbooks and the software. I'm sorry, Kim, I don't know if I missed anything. I know we had a big conversation because there's a lot of state mandates connected with social studies and health this year.
Yeah, I mean, the board received in the portal the presentations. You did a great job summarizing all of them. And these are the resources only that the committees are recommending, the teacher committees are recommending. The health textbook is the updated version of the current textbook that we're already using in district. It's just that it's the newer edition. In social studies, it's the ebook and the online resources, which Mrs. Morales also highlighted, includes a lot of text-to-text and read aloud features that can really enhance the experience for students of all ability levels, so that it can assist them in accessing that information. It's very useful for in-class resource and resource teachers to use. And that's it. It's just the resources. Next month's agenda, there will be the full list of all the curriculum guides themselves, the actual curriculum maps that the committee's created over the course of the year. So it's any new courses being introduced next year or revised curriculum guides that were up because of our 5-year renewal process, a cycle. So all of those will be on next month's agenda for the board to vote on. And our next curriculum curriculum committee meeting is scheduled for May 11th. And we spoke about the fact that we're kind of enhancing the experience. Leonora, your ears might have been ringing. We were talking about how in the past those meetings could go on for 2 or 3 hours, or sometimes we had to talk at the board meeting for 2 or 3 hours because it's a lot of curriculum to present. So what we're going to do this year is we're going to package a video where some of the teachers who were on the committees and the administrators will give a brief summary about the highlights of the changes and the reasons why they are recommending certain resources to be adopted after piloting them. So that you can view that ahead of time, and we'll put it actually on our district website so that parents and students can also get a good understanding of what the shifts or changes are in our curriculum and our courses. So, and then we're going to include that also in our student handbooks and our course selection guides, so that students have a better understanding of what the courses are about when they're making those choices next year.
Good idea.
Yep.
Yes, I think you said there was 36, right?
Yes.
36.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that's a great idea to have those videos and put them into the student manual so they can students get the advantage of that. So board members will be able to look at those videos and committee members as well If they have any questions that they want to talk about, we can get those questions answered in advance.
Yep.
Any questions?
Something's happening.
I think Leonora is trying to talk.
Speak about technology.
Can't hear her. Can't hear her.
Kim, I also wanted to mention. Sorry, I think I'm getting some feedback. That we had a question regarding Brain Pop. I think we were going to look into in terms of how we monitor what's being posted on Brain Pop. One of the committee members asked that question.
Yes, and Dr. Morales actually is in the process of investigating that. And she's going to have an update she's going to be emailing and updating the committee members. She's gotten some clarification on that.
Right, and that had to do with the posting of how Brain Pop pulls in different articles and things like that, and it's a moving target. I think we said for secondary school, secondary level.
It's for all levels. Yeah, we use it at all levels. So.
No, I know what I'm saying is the way that the application is used is different.
Oh, yes.
Versus secondary.
Correct.
The secondary has a little bit more of a nebulous sort of changing of I guess links and different videos that are included.
Correct.
All right. Leonora, student activities, co-curricular, and I believe
Can you
Mike's
hear
going
me?
to give an update.
Yes. Now we can.
Oh, okay. Kim, I was just saying that was fantastic. I like that idea of the videos. Really, it'd be much easier to see.
I know we reflected on your feedback.
Thank you. Okay, as far as co-curricular went, we did not have a meeting this past month. We got bumped. Something else came up on our calendar. But next month, I'm trying to get a committee meeting together. But I noticed on the program that we have that it looks like Mr. Ranella might have an update for us on the Municipal Alliance meeting.
That might be Mike's update on the meeting.
No, I was going to.
Oh, you're going to give it? Okay, go ahead.
Just a brief update. So we met, the Municipal Alliance met on Saturday, and I attended the meeting. And just a quick update as to how it relates to our district. They finished their Project Plus, the third cycle is completed. This week they had their graduation ceremonies on Tuesday and Wednesday. They conducted all of the sessions virtually this year. It had great turnout. The kids were really into it and a lot of really positive feedback. The facilitator actually said that it seemed like the kids were a little bit more comfortable actually being virtual and sharing some of their experiences and their thoughts, and really supportive of each other when they were kind of sharing their own experiences. And one other thing that they did this year, they asked the middle school principals, the setting principals, to attend, just because the students aren't having a lot of opportunities to interact with their new administrators. So they asked them to attend the graduation ceremonies, and they did do that. So overall, it was obviously it wasn't in person, it wasn't, what it had been in the past, but considering the circumstances, it was a really good Project Plus cycle this year.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that, Project Plus is something tremendous. And for anybody who has any fifth graders going into middle school, it's great. They, break it up by middle school pod. It's a tremendous program. My kids have gone through it. The principal attendance is something we've been working on, trying to work through principal schedules, because kind of adds a little bit more, not validity, but, sort of at the end, the fifth graders can meet, their future principal. I'd also mention too, in terms of the Municipal Alliance, they work on a grant, and their grant was reduced by a few $1,000s. So they're trying to run like a 5K, similar to what the township does in Horsey Park. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. So that information will be coming out, and that's going to be a fundraiser to sort of make up for some of those funds. In addition, some of the topics that are coming up in the Alliance are related to social emotional, which obviously has connection to substance abuse, but also talking about students and that are having issues with the way the school year has gone. I actually say for the last year and a half. And I think that some of the Municipal Alliance members are going to meet with Mr. Kirkpatrick to talk about, I guess, some of the programs and some of the information that the district makes available to our students.
Mr. Little, that meeting took place already, and we're going to continue our relationship. We had a meeting with a representative from Crossroads and the student assistance coordinators in the district earlier this week. Had a really great dialogue, and we're going to continue that relationship and try to brainstorm some ideas on how to support our students.
That's fantastic, and thanks for doing that. Thanks for doing that.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Strategic planning? That's shared services.
Yes, okay. Shared services, we met April 12th, in attendance, Board of Ed representatives, Ms. Minuis, Mr. Capone, Ms. Caminiti, and Mrs. Sabaco, Mrs. Walker, Mrs. Doherty as well. Township representatives, Mayor Tony Perry, Deputy Mayor Rick Hybel. We had the Township Engineer Ted Maloney and Township Recreation Director Janet Dillett. At the meeting, we spoke about safe routes to school, potential project Port Monmouth, New Monmouth walking area. The committee discussed the concept of developing a safe routes to school project in the Port Monmouth walking area to New Monmouth School. The district is currently providing transportation for these students, has been agreed upon. We will continue providing services for the next year. The committee concluded that Port Monmouth may not be the area most in need of safe routes to school, considering 100% transportation is offered for all students, and that all the walking areas in town should be evaluated first before selecting a potential second safe routes to school grant application. And it should be noted that River Plaza project is already approved. Port Monmouth Elementary School, the committee revisited the topic of Port Monmouth Elementary School concept of developing an indoor activity center with an indoor pool, turf surface, and track, among other things that were discussed. This could potentially be financed through a partnership with a private firm. The site would have to be evaluated to see if it would be feasible to construct this type of facility at this location. And the township engineer, Mr. Maloney, will provide more of an update at the next meeting. Next meeting is scheduled for May 10th at 5:30.
All righty. There's no
Frank, could you mention that, talk about that safe route issue again?
Yes, I did.
I think I kind of follow. You're saying that they don't want to.
So right now,
providing buses.
100% of all the students have a bus. So we want to really evaluate all the routes for all the districts that possibly could be for the next grant when we apply for it.
Okay, so you're saying instead of just concentrating on one.
Yeah, we want to do the whole district as one whole versus just zeroing in on one school right now. Because everybody does have transportation currently as we speak. And as I said, next year as well.
So what are you saying? So Mr. Capone, you're saying that transportation is going to continue into next year without a problem?
It was already discussed. I believe Mrs. Wall gave an update last meeting that this year and all of next year is already discussed. It's in the budget, correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, there was no strategic planning, so Personnel Committee met last night. Do we want to add anything?
Yes.
Sure, if I
Yes.
could jump in just on
Yes.
personnel first.
Yes.
I suspect that there's community concern and also for the sake of the board about certain remote teaching arrangements for some teachers. So I just wanted to address that first. I know it is a personnel matter, so the board's not allowed to discuss any specifics about any individual or any accommodations provided or anything like that. But just so there's transparency and no misinformation, out of all your teachers in the district, we met with 9 teachers to engage in the interactive process. And that's a legal requirement where we meet with teachers who request accommodations. Any employee, really, it's not a teacher thing. Any employee who wants an accommodation, the employer engages in what the law calls the interactive process, where you meet with the employee, discuss the employee's restrictions, their doctor's medical opinion, and the requirements of the job, and you work collaboratively to see if you could come to some amicable solution. So the law requires us to work together, and that's what we did. Like I said, we met with 9 individuals, with myself was present, an NJEA attorney was present for each of those meetings, and Charlene O'Hagan, our Human Resources Director, was present. And those occurred last week, and the district will be reaching out to those individuals.
And then just one quick update. We did talk about at the meeting last night and then again with the board. It is springtime. It's the time in which we engage in a meeting that we have planned up for May 13th to complete the renewal and non-renewal process for all employees. And we just want to remind everyone at this time that, there are certain employees in the district who will receive non-renewal notices. For example, our paraprofessionals, that happens each year. And that is due to the fact that we are currently and will be ongoing reviewing and identifying what our needs are when it comes to certain positions such as paraprofessionals for next school year. We are coming to conclusion of what the positions will be, where they will be, based on student IEPs and student 504 plans. And we will work very quickly over the course of the next 2 months in the hopes of having as many paraprofessionals recommended for the June agenda as possible. So although these employees receive their non-renewal notices in May, again, we will work quickly to identify those who will be recommended for reemployment on the June agenda.
Thank you for clarifying that. There's always a misunderstanding at the end of the year with that. Okay, does anybody have any questions on the draft agenda that we have in front of us for next week? Okay, seeing none. Any old business?
Ms. Minuis, I have a question regarding the facilities we were talking about with the Dodge commercial.
Yes.
Did we receive any remuneration for allowing that commercial? And did we have to provide any kind of safety or facilities or people to be there at the time? Like we've had other events and usually those things come up and we know about them. But are we receiving anything for this?
Mike, I believe we did receive something, and I believe they also paid for every bit of security that we needed.
Can you, Frank, Mr. Capone, that information came to us like 5 minutes before it actually happened.
And I have the same information from you, Mike. Same exact
information. So the question
information.
I would like you to share what we made or what we did if it's appropriate.
So if I can just speak out front, I don't know how much we made, but Mrs. Doherty will fill us all in.
We received a rental fee of $2,000. And in addition, the production company paid for the security we had on site, all of the hours for that. Plus, they're going to do some power washing of the parking lot.
Did we require any kind of insurance payment for the time or no? Oh,
Well,
yeah.
they had to provide a certificate of insurance, just like any other facilities user would.
Okay.
Amy, didn't that happen at the last minute though? There wasn't a lot of time to notify because it really happened at the last minute.
We happened to have a finance and facilities meeting, I believe, a day or two before, or right when this request came in. This was a last minute request by this company because like we reported out that they thought they were going to be able to use another site. They were filming all around the Middletown area. They thought they were going to be able to use another site. They were not getting the approval. So they went through the township and who referred them to us about using, one of our sites last minute. So, but we actually happened to have a committee meeting either that night or the day after, and we did update the committee on it.
But we weren't sure at that time if it was really going to be.
Definite at that time, they just.
Still a backup.
They were looking at the New York waterway at one point and they didn't know if they wanted to use our
At
site.
the committee meeting, we discussed that we were being considered as a backup.
Yep.
And then when they decided to use it, that's when the board was emailed. But yeah, it took, we were only asked a few days before it actually happened.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, under new business, I do have something I'd like to ask all the committee chairs, that when someone's not attending your committee, please notify me because I am the ex officio that should be attending, and if I can't, I will assign someone to attend. So please let me know when people are not attending, and I'll reach out because we'd like to see our committees full.
Ms. Minuis, quick question. Did you have 4 board members at the personnel meeting?
Nope, I tried to get a couple of people beforehand and then I was on a business thing, so I only found out like later in the afternoon. Eleanor couldn't make it, but I did try. I called Mrs. Wright, I called Mr. Heffernan, and then I had work to do, so I didn't get to call any further. I think I had like an hour before the meeting to continue calling and I was busy. But I did attempt to try to get 4 people at that meeting.
Thank you.
And that's my goal, to make sure there's 4 people at every committee meeting. when possible.
Mrs. Denise, I just want to remind everybody that next week at our voting meeting, it is our public hearing on our budget. It's been advertised in the newspaper. It will be on the agenda. The board is not proposing any changes to the tentative budget, so we'll be presenting that same budget again, but we do have our public hearing next Tuesday.
Okay. Any questions on that? All righty, seeing no one else, we're going to open public comment up. I'm sure we have some hands up.
Yes, so if you are logged in to the meeting with the Zoom application, at the bottom of your dashboard is a raised hand icon. If you select it, you'll be entered into a queue. If you're dialing into the meeting, you have the option of pressing *9 on your keypad, and that will also have the same effect. It'll place into a queue, and it'll bring you into the room in the order that you enter the queue. So the first is Heather Seifert.
Hi, I'm Heather Saffert, co-leader of MTFODL. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm again the co-leader of MTFODL, which is a district-wide parent group for those with students with special needs. I live at 203 Monmouth Ave in Middletown. So we're glad to see that more support will be provided to help the missed learning due to the pandemic. We also really appreciate all the efforts that have been made to date, despite the challenges that you've been faced with this year. So, again, a shout out to our parents and teachers who've been really working hard for our students. However, I am concerned about the status of the strategic plan and that the old district mission statement is on the BOE agendas. I have heard that the plan maybe have been put on hold and hope that the process can be restarted soon if it indeed has been put on hold. There was a lot of parent participation and work done in that process. And, it's a potential concern that we're not moving forward with a process that is vital to improve our students' educations. And as I've said before, we know from experience that no plan is a plan to redistrict special ed students when needed. Plus, there had been widespread support for adding inclusion to the updated mission statement. And so I hope that the new mission statement will be used going forward. And talking about inclusion, we want to thank the district for the presentation on it tonight. It's really great to see that the district is making progress with efforts to increase and improve inclusion of special needs students. We're looking forward to more parent involvement in this process going forward, and see this process really starting now with individual IEP processes and increasing our community's understanding of inclusion, today. We know research shows that inclusion benefits and improves outcomes for all of our students. And we're really excited to co-host the May 4th presentation, that the district is leading to learn more, for parents to learn more about inclusion and hear more about the district's plans for the future. And so we look forward to seeing you there. And if clarification could be provided on the strategic plan, that would be appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Okay, next is Robin Stella.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Robin Stella, River Plaza. So last week, a lot of students were devastated when they learned that their teachers were Zooming with them for the last time. Before the start of the school year, the decision was made to work with the teachers who requested accommodations and also to allow the teachers to teach from home with a substitute in the classroom. The rationale was that it was better to have certified, experienced teachers instructing the kids than to have substitutes teach in these highly specialized areas. Also, at the middle and high school level, it's really difficult to find certified subject area teachers. There aren't that many certified Latin teachers or AP physics teachers waiting around for a job. Now, it appears to me as though these teachers were presented with an ultimatum: return to work or be terminated or forced to retire. It seems as though this ill-conceived plan kind of backfired, as many of these teachers still have the same health conditions they had before, and COVID has not gone away. We have variants and strains that may or may not still harm them, even if they are vaccinated. What was the plan? Was there a plan in place if these teachers couldn't return? Are there swarms of certified geometry teachers and Italian teachers? Are they begging for jobs? I suspect that there wasn't really a plan. When all the understandably irate parents called the principals, they were given different stories. Some were told that qualified teachers are ready to step in. Others were told that their original teachers would continue asynchronously, which means leaving assignments for the students to complete just as we did in the spring. This doesn't allow for any teacher modeling, breakout rooms, or small group instruction, or for students to ask questions. I thought that we switched to synchronous education because it was more effective. Why are we moving backwards? For what purpose? Is it to save money? All year, the district paid these full-time teacher salaries and also for a sub to monitor the in-person students. By terminating these teachers and forcing them to use their sick days, the district is still paying for the full-time salaries and the sub pay as they were before. It's a wash. And if there are supposedly these great new certified teachers waiting to take over, and you're still allowing the teachers to use their sick days, the district is actually then paying 2 full-time salaries. And how can we justify something like this when we just depleted all of our reserves? Or is this a punishment? Are we intending to punish teachers who are virtual? Mr. Capone, months ago, you posted that you wanted to pay bonuses to teachers who return to school in person, but that also punishes those who are older or have health issues. Ms. Tobacco, you spent the summer posting on social media stating that teachers who are virtual should be fired and lose their tenure. When the new board members won, the patch reported that these 3 intended to get tough on teachers unions. Was the intent to bully teachers who are older or have health conditions or who care for someone with a health issue? Is this what your version of getting tough is all about? Were you trying to get these individuals to man up, as people have said online? Sorry if I sound suspicious, but in January, the board started a personnel committee that meets privately to talk about personnel without the other board members present. Until yesterday, when people were demanding answers, no one even knew who the chair of this committee was and who the members were of this special secret club. Board leadership and the chair of the committee and members of the committee claim to not know much about what's going on. So either the personnel committee and the board leadership knew about this or conceived of this plan, or maybe they didn't know. But how could a board—
Time's up. Oh, no, she's got 2 more minutes. Let her go. Go ahead, Robin.
How could you not know, as board president and chair of personnel, to not know of a mass exodus of employees from the district? And why wasn't this discussed as a full board, or maybe it was? It's unacceptable. To treat these dedicated employees like this is atrocious. But what's worse is that these kids who have suffered through such a difficult year will now have to adjust to yet another change. Their education is being disrupted. Do we not need the last few months of geometry? Well, it's on the SAT, so they do. Or physics, biology, Italian, or other subjects. It appears to the public, at least, that the board and the district is fulfilling some sort of mean-spirited get tough promise. I implore you all to please reinstate these teachers and allow these kids to have some semblance of normalcy in what they've known all year. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to address the mass exodus again?
No, I mean, I can't
Or
speak to
what's
the
going
math. The
on,
only
yeah.
thing I wanted to address in there, because I was in each of those meetings
Yeah.
with, as I said in my statement before, with an NJEA attorney, and no one was threatened, said come back to school or be fired or retire, not one person. So.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Okay, next is Laura Abrams.
Hi. I called in the other night after having received a form letter from Ms. Walker that didn't answer any of my questions about the return to school. So I'm calling again in hopes of actually getting some answers. Just to be clear, any questions that have been asked at my child's school, Leonardo, Colton Court and Leonardo. Any questions that have been asked at my child's school, Leonardo, have been answered to the best of the principal's ability. But the questions that I've been asking relate to the district-wide movement to full day and not just to one school. So Ms. Walker's email said that having students in for full days for 1 month will help students gain 1 whole week of instruction, but we all know that that's quite silly because historically May and June are times of testing and celebration. So there won't be a gain there and only a loss for the students who go back to fully virtual. From day one, the district has said that they would follow science. The email from Ms. Walker references gaps in students' learning this year. So I'm wondering if the quote unquote science is the data that shows that students have gaps. But students around the world are falling behind. So it's really not an adequate excuse to move forward in a recovery plan when actual scientific data states that our area is not ready for a return to full day. I fully recognize Ms. Walker's earlier statement tonight where you recognize the trepidation that parents have, but you also did not include any science. So where are those health and safety officials now? Why aren't they at Board of Ed meetings giving statements to ease parent worries? You left out a whole bunch of facts, including how there are current grade levels that are working remotely for the remainder of the week because they've been exposed while masked in a classroom. You've gotten around making this public by listing each school as hybrid on the website. You don't provide the number of quarantine students, which is numerous. And until just hours ago, you had not updated the number of remote students since January. So I'm curious, how many students are currently quarantined because they were close contacts in school? And why isn't the public notified of these numbers? For those that say, look at private schools, they're keeping their numbers private for a reason. And as far as neighboring districts are concerned, any school that serves lunch has not reported the positive cases that we have in Middletown. And perhaps it's because the parents in other districts are more responsible and they're not letting their children go to 200-person parties. Or perhaps the district administration actually made them quarantine instead of poo-pooing it like Middletown did. So a faculty member from the district has died. Parents and extended families of students within the district have died. You have parents calling in with COVID begging you to consider not taking this step. Middletown is not exempt from COVID cases. But that doesn't seem to matter as much as politics. You're pushing through the reopening plan with complete disregard for the state of our community. And at the very least, I implore you to send out a well-written survey, not some confusing garbage that leaves parents with more questions, asking how many parents actually plan to have their children return to virtual learning when you go to full day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Vera, my second.
Hi, Vera Paseki, Eshire Drive in Middletown. I just wanted to take a minute to talk about the inclusion grant and to thank particularly Dr. Tiedemann for bringing NJCIE into the district and pushing forward with these grants. I just want to emphasize, because I know some people when they're listening and they hear inclusion, they think specific to special education. But I think it's really important that people understand that these grants will benefit all students, whether they're typically learning or special education. I mean, the research is clear that inclusion helps typical learner as well as special education. So it's a wonderful opportunity. Also, I'd like to thank the district for including a parent component in the future on this grant. Because there is none from a state level. So I appreciate what they're doing on that perspective. As it relates to effective school solutions, I'm very supportive of enhancing mental health programs at the middle school. Just one thing that I hope you all will consider. I don't know the details. I heard the reference to referrals and it being housed at Thorne Middle School. I would like you all to consider where all these specialized programs are. I know Thompson is crowded. I know we have almost 1,000 students, but there are absolutely no specialized programs at Thompson. So children that go to Village LLD cannot continue with their classmates because the LLD program at Thompson has been shut down. So more and more of these specialized programs go to Thorne, go to Bayshore, which requires potential movement of more students. And, you know, I know Thorne has behavioral programs, has a whole bunch of specialized programs. Thompson has nothing, and we have 1,000 students. So I just would like, since redistricting seems to, and strategic planning seems to not be moving forward, I'd just like you all to consider looking at where these programs are and making sure that there's a little bit of a more level of support so that students can continue with their community through secondary school. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vera.
Next is Stacy Jones.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to make a comment regarding the May 10th move to full day with the lunches. I would like to encourage any administrators and board members who were not on Monday's meeting to please go back and listen to the recording of my 3-minute public comment, because I'm not going to repeat it in full. But I want to first address Mrs. Walker's statements tonight. I find it a travesty on the part of the district to call the special needs lunch program a success with the harm that has come from it. And
That's not right.
I do think that, you consistently interrupt me when I speak. I'm entitled to voice my opinion just like every other member of the public. Thank you.
We're letting you speak, Stacy. Go ahead.
So I think that's an unfair representation. And I think that framing it in a way that suits your agenda of moving forward with the final phase when the risk scenario in the community does not allow for that is deplorable. I'm very disappointed. That said, there have been some new developments since I spoke on Monday. I expressed significant concern on Monday about the health and safety, about the COVID variants, about the fact that as a community, this is the wrong time to be moving forward with indoor lunches. Since I spoke then, Thorne has the entire 6th grade on quarantine. They've shut down extracurriculars and sports because of spread. Thompson has had a ton of students go out today on quarantine, including my daughter as a close contact, who's now quarantined for 2 weeks. This is without lunches in the building, okay? And everyone is concerned for all of the things they've worked for the end of the year to even be able to stay open, as these middle schools are on day 3 of the first day of a 5-day week trying to collapse the cohorts together. And you have 1 6th grade virtual, you have tons of students being put out as close contacts on quarantine, and everyone's masked. What's going to happen when you unmask? There's tons of active cases in your schools. You're not in a position to be moving forward without putting the health and safety of every family in this community at risk, because all of these students have siblings in other schools in the district, have unvaccinated parents at home, have grandparents, have the staff members. It trickles down and affects everybody. And I just find it irresponsible at this stage to make the priority testing a phase that we are at a high risk for and was written into the plan to be implemented when we were at low or moderate risk. We are not there, and you should not be moving forward on May 10th. And I want to finish with the fact that I asked that something be afforded to the in-person students aside from just a complete flip to virtual if their families are not comfortable with them eating in the schools, and nothing was addressed. And there's been no comments back. There's been no answer to that question. You have hundreds of district families who want that, and you're not even addressing it in your statement. People besides me, we've asked for the health data showing what you're using to base this move based on, and you've presented nothing. You've answered nobody with that. So I am just appalled that you think it's acceptable to move forward with this for May 10th. And reading a form letter, just like the one you sent out about the plan and telling us to wait for more information from the principals, doesn't address all the questions that were asked on Monday. And again, I encourage anyone who wasn't on Monday's call to go and listen, because it was only a half an hour of public comment, and every single caller expressed opposition to this plan, and every single caller asked questions and asked for things to be addressed that are lacking in the plan, and you came back with nothing tonight. And that's just so disheartening as a member of the community. So again, someone with a public health background, I ask that you put the health and safety of the community first and do not open these schools for unmasked lunches when the community has a high risk of spread with the UK variant flying around Monmouth County and kids getting quarantined daily from the schools. It's absolutely unacceptable as a plan, and you need to revisit it and pull it off the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Walker, did you want to address an issue that was definitely not true?
Yeah, well, what I say is that we have had no positive cases related to lunches in the district to date. And I think that answers that question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next is Michelle Collins.
Hi, I wasn't planning on calling in again, but I was a little triggered by Mrs. Walker talking about how when every phase of the reopening was implemented, it was successful. How do you characterize successful? Because my daughter, who's a junior at South, was quarantined within a week of the combination of cohorts because she was a sick student and missed the first two, please don't groan, and missed the first 2 weeks of a 5-week volleyball season, which she had been looking forward to all year after it was postponed from the fall. She's also has extreme difficulty with virtual instruction and had to stay home from school on a mandatory quarantine. She's in 3 AP classes and it caused her to fall behind. Now we have AP exams coming, could possibly be canceled because of, mass exposure from lunches, but whatever. And then you're saying that students are currently eating snacks successfully. Are they the same kids who are also attending parties every weekend? Because I think the ones who are eating snack are probably like 10. How can you compare elementary ed students eating snacks with special needs to high schoolers eating lunch in school, who we know aren't taking this virus seriously? There are also documented studies that have shown that people further than 6 feet away have been affected while dining out in restaurants. Now it seems that you're not even going to quarantine anybody if there's an exposure during lunch. I don't understand how this is happening. Do you know that most student athletes have chosen to stay virtual at South so that their teams are still able to go forward and there's no shutdown of their teams? So they're sacrificing their education so that they can continue with their sports because they know that they're at severe risk of quarantine. Do you know that coaches are telling kids to stay far away from other kids if they do go to school? Everyone is so worried about being quarantined. This is just insane. Do you know that most high schoolers are planning on going to virtual? My daughter has talked to the whole junior class. Most of them are going to switch to virtual if it's all implemented. What is the point of this? How can you justify this as being best for kids? There's going to be less kids in school in person. This is the opposite of what you want. How does this make sense? Juniors and seniors should be vaccinated by the fall and possibly younger teens. Why can't you wait until the fall for this for the high schoolers? And if there is any question that a lunch aide contracted COVID from working in our district, there's no way that you can prove that she didn't. And if there's any question, it is so shameful that you are going through with this. Shameful. I'm so disappointed in this district right now. I was happy up until now, and it's just gone south. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Next is Ann Basil.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Ann Basil. I have a daughter in Lincroft and a daughter in Thompson. I think you need my address, so it's 4 Branson in Lincroft. I just want to also touch base on the lunches. I tend to just be a very logical person, and I can't find the logic in it. Quite frankly, I find the plan for the lunches almost bordering on silly. This all or nothing plan, I just don't see how it works. I really just don't. And having an elementary versus a middle schooler, I look at my kids differently. They're different schools, they're different kids, they're different ages. Elementary school, middle school, high school, they're just different animals. And so I don't think you can go forward with a plan and say this is across the board. Could it work in elementary? Maybe. Could it work in middle? No way. No way. And I can't speak to high school because I don't have a high schooler. I can't imagine this in Thompson. My daughter, somebody else mentioned that their daughter was quarantined. My daughter just got notified she's now under quarantine for 2 weeks also, which impacts her track tryouts for next week. And this is pre-lunches. My background is a behavioral health professional, and this lunch topic is is the thing that is causing more stress on my middle schooler than anything else this year, anything else. So the mentality of put them back in school for full days and that'll make mental health better, it just doesn't hold water. It's actually worse in my house now with this plan. So it's like now putting me in a rock and a hard place because this is all or nothing plan. Kind of feel like the concept of putting them in a lunchroom, 6 feet apart, facing forward with lunches on their laps, no interactions. It feels like juvie to me. Like all this is going to do is maybe deter a criminal background for my child because this is just this really bizarre concept. It's just not for kids. There's 1 month left. It's the end of the school year. It's a really impractical and unnecessary plan. I just don't see it. I mean, I think we've made the best that we can do with this year. I think you've all put a lot of effort into making it the best it can be. I appreciate that, but I think you just have to call it. It is what it is. Wait till September. It just doesn't make sense. I'm going to have to pull mine out to be all virtual because I just don't see it working for her as a middle schooler. She'll lose the track season because she'll be in quarantine all the time. And I have no interest in her being virtual 5 days a week. She's in 5 days a week now. I have no interest in pulling her all virtual. But you're kind of putting all of us parents in that rock and a hard place. I don't think you're doing it for the best of the children. I think you're doing it for your own agendas. I'm sorry, but I do. And I think it's just not going to work. So thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Next is Marguerite Stopper.
Marguerite Stocker, River Plaza. I would just like to clarify a few facts about safe routes to school. The district can't just simply apply for a grant. There is an arduous process involved. Each school needs to submit projects and participate in activities over the course of several years in order to move their project to a level to which they can receive funding from safe routes. Having gone through this successful process at River Plaza, I encourage you to reach out to me for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Marguerite.
Next is Kelly Brown.
You there, Kelly?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to get a specific date as to when those lunch plans will be communicated to parents. You're requiring 48 hours notice from us if we choose to switch our children from their current method of attendance. If a plan is coming out May 9th, 8 o'clock at night, you're not going to be getting 48 hours notice from anyone when they want to, if they want to switch their child. So I would hope you could give us a specific date when we will see what this lunch plan might be in our children's schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Not seeing any more hands raised at this time.
All right, seeing no more hands, can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, abstentions?